Alright, so the other day I was in a server, and I saw this contraption right here. I believe it's a pretty popular design, but I personally hate it. I'm not sure where this design originated from. I don't plan on crediting the person who came up with it, but it's a popular design. I saw someone on my server using it, so I rebuilt it there. I couldn't, like, find the video on it. I'm too lazy to do that. Um, Anyhow, this is not my design. Just know that. This is a carrot wheat potato farm. It is essentially supposed to be pocket-sized and instant, however, it really looks quite hunky to me, and it's not very log efficient. It's kind of slow, in my opinion. I'll talk about my design later. And here it is in action. So I'm going to quickly switch over to survival mode, just because if I'm in creative, it'll automatically try to eat the potato, which gets in the way of the farm. We're going to get to one full stack very quickly. There we go. One stack of potatoes. I'll figure out how long that took later. I know it'll be slower than what I'm about to present. That right there was the basically machine that I've seen people using. Now let's talk about what I dislike about it, and there's a few things. First off, the speed is the main issue that I have with it. However, I'll also discuss lag very shortly and the whole building process, because I dislike those too. First off, the speed of it. Essentially what's happening here is you place a potato, an observer here detects, okay, there's been a block update, there's now a potato in front of me. It goes ahead and activates this block, or powers this block right over here, which activates these redstone dots. Those redstone dots activate the blocks right next to them, and thereby power these dispensers full of bone meal. Do note that this farm eats 3 bone meal, but that's not your main concern with this farm. Of course, you have bone meal if you're going to be instantly growing potatoes. Now, essentially, that right there will grow the potato. The observer, I don't believe that's what it detects for a second round, but essentially, it instantly grows the potato. And let's go back to the back of the machine here. These redstone dots were just activated. This redstone dot is on top of an observer, which will, of course, observe the power and activate this redstone down here for a tick. 1 tick pulses cause pistons to spit out or pull back blocks. And so this block here is pulled back, just like so. Now you're probably wondering, okay, how does it get spit back up though? What's up with that? Essentially, when this block is pulled down, the potato is destroyed. The observer here realizes, okay, there's no longer a potato in front of me. All this redstone activates again. This observer activates again. This redstone activates again. This piston right here with the farmland block down there will now spit the block back up because it just received a second 1 tick pulse. So that's how this farm works. Now essentially the problem with speed is that one observer, second observer, piston. Those are going to be the main sort of speed issues. You're using 2 observers and 1 piston. Observers take 1 full redstone tick and pistons take 1.5 redstone ticks, which is 2 game ticks and 3 game ticks respectively. And that in itself is a little bit slow, so that's sort of why it takes so long for this block to retract. But secondly, it'll actually take twice as long, or that time will be doubled, because it has to sense the potato missing and then activate the whole process again in order to actually spit the block back up or reset the machine. And so this machine right here, just based on those observers and that piston, will take at least 7 game ticks. Sorry, no, 14 game ticks, because twice that. So 14 game ticks right there. And essentially, I'll show you my design in a second. The main switch is that we're only using 1 observer. So the speed here is 10 ticks per potato or 14 ticks per potato. That machine right there is roughly 40% slower. Anyhow, that's the main thing. If you farm for an hour, you're going to get 40% less from there. Or it's going to go 40% slower. Those are just estimations. I haven't actually tried this out. I'll try it out sometime though. Alright, so far I've told you about the speed. Let me just showcase it really quickly. Note that I'm going to start with a wooden hoe in my main hand and 10 potatoes in my offhand. This is necessary. You have to always have 10 potatoes at least in your offhand in order to kickstart the machine and get it going. And the hoe is basically to continue farming. You always have to have a hoe in your main hand. It can't be the other way around, otherwise the hoe won't prioritize over the potatoes. and you'll probably realize the reasoning for this soon, but I'll explain it in a minute if you don't get it. Essentially, here's the machine. Let's just do a speed test really quickly. As you can see, getting a stack of potatoes was significantly faster. Do keep in mind once again that we started with 10. That said, you could see the speed difference there. So yeah, there's a pretty significant speed difference. That would be the main reason to use this machine. There are some other things like slight lag increase and building ease, which I will talk about very shortly. But before that, let's talk about the downsides of this machine or the issues with it. Now, as I mentioned, you do need to have at least 10 potatoes in your offhand in order to get the machine running. If you don't, here's what's going to happen. Well, there's a few different things that could happen. First off, if you only have one potato, and we try to run this, what's going to happen is that potato just simply will not grow. And the reason is the first potato is more like a Kickstarter potato. It tells the machine, okay, activate. The piston will immediately pull back and push forward whether or not the potato has actually grown. So as you can see, whether or not the potato actually grows, it's being retracted immediately. That is the key to the speed because the first potato doesn't actually grow itself. It just triggers the dispensers. The machine only starts to give you potatoes when you have multiple. So I'll showcase that right now. As you can see this time, we did get potatoes, and we have made profit. The first potato was used to kickstart the machine, so we'll just drop that right there. The second potato was actually placed on the block. The observer activated and immediately retracted the block, so immediately, well, pretty much as fast as possible, picked up the potato within 4 game ticks. This is as fast as the machine can get, I believe. Now, how does the potato grow if that's the case? Because the first potato is never going to grow because of the way that the dispensers are timed. Luckily for us, we actually do get lucky here. This first potato, you can hear the dispensers activating, but we don't see their effect. The reason is they're activating right after this piston pulls up back the block, so the potato's already gone. That said, they activated just the right timing that when this block is pushed back out and we place our second potato, the dispenser from the first potato will grow the second potato for us. As you can see, the second potato will always be grown. From here on out, essentially, each potato is only going to act as a trigger for the dispensers for the next potato. So when you plant your potato, you're not actually growing that potato, you're growing the one after it. And so by placing potatoes repetitively, you can get this system going. And that's sort of the key to the speed. We don't wait for the dispensers to activate before pulling down the piston. We just pull down the piston regardless because we know we're mass producing and we're going to activate those dispensers either way. There's a few different ideas for this. I might still play around with it, but I've essentially just taken the top of that design, incorporated it with this one, got rid of the water, and it's still pretty efficient, or it's even more efficient. So that's sort of the potato count downside. You do need to start with 10 potatoes, otherwise it's just going to be difficult to get this thing going. Now you're probably wondering, okay, I get why I need more than one potato, but what's wrong with having like 3 potatoes? Essentially, it takes you too long to pick up the potatoes, so that right there gave me potatoes, but I had to wait to pick it up. If I were to just continue holding down right click, like you would want to while using this machine, the potatoes are going to leave my offhand, and I'll constantly have to switch back and try again until I can get the machine working. As you can see, I got it working with 5 here. I'd recommend 10 though. And of course, the rest of your inventory will hold the overflow potatoes. So it's not like you'll stop gaining potatoes once you get a stack. No, it'll just go to the rest of your inventory. So you should be set. The second downside for this is the hoe. As you can see, this design also saves a lot of space because the last one had a nice block of water in the center. This means that no matter how many times you used it, you never have to till this block because it's always going to stay hydrated and it's just never going to turn back to dirt. This block, however, when the block is retracted, it goes underneath the observer, which is a solid block, and it tells this block, okay, you're going to revert to being dirt. That said, the second you see dirt and you till it with a hoe, it immediately turns to farmland. I don't think it even takes 1 game tick, it just immediately does it. And that means that essentially you can just hold down right click while holding both a hoe and a potato, and it'll just immediately plant the potato the second this block is returned. So that's why my hoe is losing durability, that's why I have the hoe in the first place. Considering how much faster this is, I'd say that this is definitely worth it to burn through hose in order to get rid of that water block there, because it really does speed up the machine a lot to have that piston right next to this observer. It's just all around worth it. You may not think so, but let me just show you very quickly how easy it is to craft a wooden hoe. And a wooden hoe is worth roughly 2 or 3 stacks of potatoes with this machine. Literally takes one log. You turn a log into planks, you craft up some sticks, you make your hoe. That right there is 3 stacks of potatoes. Really fast. It's cheap. I don't know how else to sell this. It's really cheap. It's fast. It's efficient. There's not much reason to use this giant machine over the tiny one. Yeah. Alright, let's talk about lag. Essentially, the lag from both these machines, I'm going to be honest, it's very small. They're not going to cause much lag. That said, this one is a lot more lag efficient than the giant machine. And I'll explain why here. When this machine activates, we already discussed how there's sort of 2 waves of redstone going by, or there's like a 2-part wave of redstone, because the machine has to wait to do things in a certain order, unlike the smaller version there. Essentially what's going to happen is, we've already talked about this, the observer picks up that a potato has been placed, and it sends a pulse to these redstone dots. Now, redstone dots have a light level of 7, I believe. I forget the number. I think it was 7. And essentially what that means is the game's going to have to calculate all the light levels changing within 7 blocks. Let's walk you through this. So this light level becomes 7. That will affect the light levels next of the block next to it. And hence the game has to basically update all these blocks' statuses. If this block is a light level 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And this one right here will have a light level of 0. That's where the updates will stop. So essentially, every redstone dot will be sending mini updates to calculate light levels to essentially sphere around that dot there. And light level 7 is really little. You can barely see it, but it still does exist. Now, essentially, that right there, that is one dot. That doesn't cause much lag, though. Minecraft knows how to handle it. Otherwise, redstone would have major issues running on your world. So that right there is really easy to calculate, and that's why this machine barely has any lag, either way. When you're running a server and every bit of lag counts, then maybe there's some things to consider here, or when you try to mass produce this with like 100 players. Anyhow, 3 redstone dots activate. They all give that light update, but they're giving it at the same time. So the game only has to calculate this block, for example, once within the same game tick, because these redstone blocks activate at the same time. It doesn't have to calculate that same block multiple times because they activated at the same time. However, then this observer realizes, okay, that was powered, and then it sets off these 2. And these 2 are going to be 1 redstone tick later, so 2 game ticks later. The game's going to have to recalculate all over again. So keep in mind that's a 1 tick pulse. It's going to have to calculate the light turning on, then the light turning off, and then from these ones the light turning on, and then the light turning off again. And then when the potato is destroyed, so that's only when the potato is planted, when the potato is destroyed it goes through all that again. Meanwhile, in the other machine, essentially every potato placed will update once, and once total, rather than 4 times. Just to clarify, 1 potato. You see that right there activated twice. That means that there's been 4 redstone updates. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Meanwhile, with this machine, you place 1 potato, you're only going to get 1 redstone update. You can see it activates once. That's it. And as you're spamming potatoes, it'll just be doing 1 update per potato with the addition of 1 pulse for the jump starter, because the first potato doesn't actually grow. So tiny amount of lag reduction. It's not significant or anything, but it is existent. There is a reduced lag coming out of this machine. Alright, I think I've hit all of my main talking points. I'm going to go ahead and design a quick etho clock to dispense you a wooden hoe so that you can make sure you always got a hoe ready. Because once your hoe breaks on this machine, it's really just over until you go ahead and craft up a new hoe, which is kind of a waste of your time. If you only plan on farming for roughly 3 minutes or less, what I'd recommend doing is to just drop 5 or 6 hose right here, and it'll just stick around in your inventory. You'll basically pick one up the second yours breaks. The second option, though, if you plan on going AFK for a lot longer, is to set up an etho hopper clock, and so I'll just get this set up in 1 second. Alright, got my etho hopper clock. Here we are. Essentially, what's going to happen here is, well, let's just show a quick example of it being powered. Essentially, while this lever is select, the machine will turn off. It's just a standard etho hopper clock. Items going back and forth between a hopper. Comparatives, sensing these outputs. Redstone, keeping pistons activated or deactivated in order to move this redstone block back and forth, powering or unpowering certain hoppers. In my design here, I've just added this little dispenser right here, which will say, okay, every time the redstone block moves under me, dispense 1 wooden hoe from this huge supply. You can hook this up to as many rows of chests that you want, so this is really nice and easy. And all it takes is roughly 50 blocks inside here to keep yourself constantly supplied with hose. I believe that's it. There's many ways to make a compact etho clock. This is not a video on etho clock, it is a video on these farms, but just showing that it's possible to easily dispense constant items to yourself. Alright, yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.